Greetings, fans of witchery and the dark arts. I'm Peter Scove for Music is a Journey, and today I want to gush about a band that I have been totally into for the last couple of weeks. I want to talk today about Blood Ceremony. Maybe you've seen this album sitting in the background in a couple of my recent videos. This is the latest album, The Old Ways Remain, released on May 5th of this year. Yes, I finally got it just a couple of weeks back. They've got 5 albums out so far, and I want to talk a little bit about each of the albums. But first of all, let's take a look back, way back, to when the band first got started. Back around 2002, guitarist Sean Kennedy became friends with flautist Alia O'Brien. The two of them shared an interest in music of the late 60s and early 70s, and I think also in horror films from that time, particularly those related to the occult and witchcraft and black magic and so forth. So they became friends, and Alia introduced Sean to the music of Jethro Tull, of course, being the flautist that Ian Anderson is. And then we skip ahead about 3 years to 2005. Sean is putting together a new band, and he wants to play a kind of heavy rock, early heavy metal style there from the early 70s. And he asks Alia to come in and perhaps play flute on a couple of tracks. Well, Alia shows up with her flute and also shows up at one of the sessions with her farfisa organ. And once they start working together, it becomes quite clear that the flute and the organ should be an integral part of the band's sound. And so Alia is asked to join the band and become a full-time member. Now, they had another vocalist at this time. However, shortly after, that vocalist decided that she was going to head off to India. And so now they were in need of a new vocalist, and the job fell onto Alia's shoulders. So Alia becomes the vocalist for the new band, Blood Ceremony, as well she is the flautist and the organ player. Now we skip ahead 3 more years to 2008, and the band released their debut album, self-titled, on Rise Above Records. We have Sean Kennedy on guitars and composer. We have Alia O'Brien, vocals, flute, and organ. We have Chris Land on bass, and Jeremy Finkelstein on drums. And so the album, minus this barcode thing, looks like this. Now, the interesting thing about the band at this time is they, in 2005, they were playing this kind of heavy early 70s retro rock lyrics, occult based, along the lines of Coven or Black Widow. And at that time there, that scene was kind of just getting started. There weren't really a lot of bands doing it back then. In fact, Alia said in one interview when she heard a band, Witchcraft, playing that style of music, she was really impressed that there was a band actually playing music like that. So by 2008, they come out with the debut album, and what we have here is a real feast. If you love that early 70s sound, has a stoner rock sound to the guitars, but you've got doom metal type riffs. We have flute all over the place except for on the opening track, which is very interesting because the opening track, Master of Confusion, has, I think, over 2 minutes of intro. First with some eerie organ coming in, carrying us through for about 30 seconds or more, then drums come in and we get very heavy riffs, and finally the song actually starts playing after, I think, like 2.5 minutes or so. The rest of the album is quite similar. Again, these like early 70s heavy doom type riffs, but we have a lot of interesting play going on with the guitars, meaning electric and bass, and the flute. And there are a lot of places in some of the songs where they really work on that instrumental part, and I can imagine in a couple of places if you took out the heavy rock band and instead replaced it with an orchestra, the flute playing would work just the same. It's like that. So lots of really cool heavy riffs, great flute playing, some great guitar solos coming here as well. We also have lots of farfisa organ with some organ solos. One of the tracks, The Rare Lord, also features some violin, or is it viola? Anyway, one of those on the track there for a really actually nice touch to the music. How they use the viola in the music is really cool. The lyrics at this point here, some interesting lyrics. For example, the song Hop Toad begins with, "I once saw walking on my land a witch with garland in her hand. When laid upon some marble stones, the earth was made to shift and groan." I like those kind of lyrics. It's really cool imagery. But there's another song in there. I think it's the one, I'm Coming With You. It goes like, it's a black mass and I'm ready to go. It sounds to me like, you know, a young woman in the living room all excited about going to her first black mass or something. Okay. But anyway, this is a killer heavy retro album. It does show the band starting out, so you know what they would become over later albums and what they would grow into. This pales compared to that in a way, specifically with regards to lyric writing and songwriting. However, this is an exciting album. I watched a video on Sea of Tranquility, Pete Pardo, and I think it was Jamie Laszlo, a friend of his. They ranked the albums of Blood Ceremony. Pete had this at his number 2 because he loves the heavy doom metal stuff, whereas Jamie had it as his number 5 for the reason that it still shows the band starting out. And that's one of the things I find with debut albums. I always get the impression that the debut album shows you where the band is coming from. It's the sophomore album where they start to turn, and you can have to kind of guess what direction they're going to move in. So now let's move on to the sophomore album. This one here, released on Rise Above Records in 2011. This is Living with the Ancients, and there are some major changes happening here. So first of all, we lost Jeremy Finkelstein on drums. We now have Andrew Houst on drums, and we lost Chris Landon on bass. We now have Lucas Gadke on bass. The kind of old school early 70s rock guitar sound is now changed. It's more of a heavy metal sound, more of a heavy metal distortion sound. The songs are still heavy, but I don't feel those kind of doom metal riffs. I think it's just more like heavy riffs in a lot of places. We still hear a lot of flute, but not as much as before. I feel there's a little bit less than before, and the Farfisa organ has now been replaced with a little bit more of a growly organ. So giving it in a way a little bit more of a Uriah Heep feel, but at times I also feel it has almost like a Pink Floydian type organ sound in places. So some really cool tracks on here, some heavy ones. We have like the opening track, The Great God Pan. Actually, this is kind of interesting because the previous album, the first album, concluded with a song called Hymn to Pan, which had some great flute playing at the beginning and concluded with an organ solo. Here, The Great God Pan actually has no flute, which is curious because, you know, pan flute, you kind of associate the flute with Pan, but no flute on that song there. But that's all right, because we actually have some really cool instrumentals on here, and the best one for me, the best of all their instrumentals for me, is one called The Hermit. It has the rock band playing a very nice melodic and you know, upbeat kind of a backing for the flute solos, but I really love the flute solos because we have, in some places, single flute, but in other places, kind of as an accent point, we have a secondary flute coming in, and those moments, I feel the playing style gives it a kind of like Andean music flavor to it, almost like those pan flutes of the Andes in places, and I really love it. It's one of those tracks where as soon as it's done, I hit repeat because I've got to hear it again, or even sometimes when I'm on my way from home heading off to the station and I'm going to listen to Blood Ceremony all the way to work, I'll start off with that one there, The Hermit, just because I love that flute solo so much. Lots of other really cool ones here. My Demon Brother is really heavy. The last one, Daughter of the Sun. Morning of the Magicians is really cool because we've got some Moog synthesizer coming in there in places. And some of these songs too, they're quite long. Some of them are like 7-8 minutes long, and there'll be moments where it'll kind of quiet down. You might get an organ bit coming in as it leads into the next part of the song, or maybe some acoustic guitar, like in Morning of the Magicians. We get an acoustic guitar bit, and then it'll come in to conclude with, again, maybe a faster piece or something different, introducing a kind of wild solo, maybe flute, maybe organ, maybe guitar. Really cool. And one of the things also about these first two albums is there are these moments where you get some emphasis on the drums, or even, you know, a bit of a bass moment where the bass comes in and just adds some growly, mean, low-end accent points. So really wonderful. Honestly, I find that I just got this album also a couple of weeks back when I got the latest album here, and I know that Sea of Tranquility, both Pete Pardo and Jamie Laszlo gave this one their first place ranking. Pete, no doubt, he loves the heavy stuff. Jamie said it was originally his number 4, but a few days before they made their video, he suddenly had an epiphany and decided this was his number 1. My personal feelings about this album are that listening to it on, playing it off my phone onto a Bluetooth speakers, home stereo, or a little portable speaker, or even just playing it off my phone on the table, it sounds really cool. But when I listen to it with the earphones in, I feel the mix is a little bit dense compared to the other albums, which means it's my image is always like someone has put a felt blanket over the speakers, so something is a little bit cut off there. And also Alia's singing is much lower here. A lot of times it's much lower register singing. I heard an interview where she said that when they were recording the fourth album in London, she had a throat infection which prevented her from actually doing any singing for a couple of days. And in that interview she said the same thing happened when they went to Chicago to record the second album. So I'm wondering if her lower register singing isn't just because she's getting over a throat infection, or if it's because the band is going for a heavier sound now with a more metal guitar crunch and with the kind of more growly organ rather than the lighter Farfisa organ. But anyway, still a terrific album. If this had been the first Blood Ceremony album I'd ever heard, I would have thought, what a fantastic band, I've got to get more. And I'm going to be listening to this one on my way to work tomorrow just to confirm that I do really like it. So we go a couple of years now, moving up to 2013, and we get the third album, The Eldritch Dark. We have another lineup change. Andrew House, was it? House on drums is gone. Michael Carrillo comes in. And good news, we now have the Blood Ceremony lineup that we have today. So for the last 11 years, we've had the same four members in the band. Sean Kennedy on guitar, Ali O'Brien, vocals, organ, flute, Lucas Gadke, bass, backing vocals, and a lead vocal somewhere, and as well Michael Carrillo on drums. This album here, for me, is not only my favorite Blood Ceremony album, but this could easily be one of my top whatever favorite albums. Like, you know, if I were going to Mars and I could only take so many albums with me, this one would have to come along. I really love what they've done. First of all, the guitar sound is not as heavy, and even just a more cleaner rock guitar sound in a lot of places, but the riffs have become more intricate and more interesting, I think. We're moving away. We don't have those doomy riffs, which had some really cool, like early 70s kind of extended riff, you know, where there's more to it than just a few bar chords. But we've got some more kind of almost like progressive time signatures, I feel. The drumming, the way the drumming fits in the spaces between the chords and with the chords, I feel it gets your attention on the drumming, even when the drumming is just giving you the rhythm, right? Also, there are some great, drum parts coming in here as well. Really wonderful bass playing, some really melodic, almost like bass chords coming out in a couple of songs. And we have Lord Summerisle, which features Lucas Gadke on lead vocal with Ali O'Brien singing a duet. Lord Summerisle being based on the Wicker Man movie of 1973. So that is really cool, and in any review or anything I've heard people say about that song, everybody says it's wonderful and it should happen more often. Unfortunately, that's Lucas's only lead vocal so far out of the 5 albums. Let's hope for something on the 6th maybe. Lots of just really cool songs, but one of the things I really noticed, first of all, I think the balance with flute and organ is really nicely done now. You know, the first album was very flute-centered and the organ came in places. The second album, I think they tried to scale back on the flute. That's my impression anyway. I didn't actually check how many songs had it and didn't. But I feel this one here, the balance is really good. The organ is in there in great places and the flute is coming in there. I also feel the flute has gone from being very light and fanciful, and there's getting to be more expression in the playing now. I feel so anyway. And maybe that's just, this band. Maybe that's the direction of the music. Maybe it's, Alia's growing as a flautist. Who knows? But I just really love basically every track on this album is really, really cool. We again have some fiddle or viola for the Ballad of the Weird Sisters. This is a really cool ballad. It's like a traditional ballad from way back when. It's a story. It's a story of two travelers, and we're hearing it from the perspective of one traveler. They are outside the city gates, and they're walking, and they hear some sounds. Three hags approach them and invite them to their residence in the forest. They're given a drink, which is of mandrake root, and the story narrator has these, fever visions of all the people that she has wronged, basically lives. She or he, it's hard to say. Sean writes the lyrics, Alia sings them. But anyway, they, all the lives they have stolen in the past. And everybody else can hear this as well. And the narrator now realizes everybody is aware of the crimes that they have committed. And so it's going to be the gallows. And so what to do? Well, they're in the forest. So the narrator draws their dagger, and it's like in a flash I drew my dagger, and my fellow screamed in pain. Then I turned upon the sisters, to them I did the same. At once the room it filled with blood, and the horror of their cries, the night a murder banquet, a feast of ruined lives. Possessed they were with fortune's gift, and yet they were surprised. Three sisters should have better known than to let this devil inside. The songwriting on this album is phenomenal. Like, the lyrics have become really works of art, works of poetry. I'm so into listening to the lyrics that they write for this. And even like the very first song, Witchwood, it just starts off with black magic has come to Witchwood. And I feel Alia's expression, her use of her voice to give the feeling to the lyrics of the song, she has really mastered it here. The previous album she was singing in lower registers sometime, and the album before that I think she was going with the style of the music, but by here I think she's become really expressive, the way she sings, like, such strange words and strange visions. Like, she's putting that emotion into her voice and giving that kind of feeling of evil or wickedness. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Basically, yeah, every song on here is incredible. Fantastic pieces of work. Lots of moments with flute solos. Get some psychedelic moments. Some really cool riffs. Fabulous, fabulous album. Apparently, it was on Rolling Stone's 2013 list of best metal albums of the year. So we're going to skip ahead now 3 years. The band are off in London. They had some ideas for the album. They had some ideas for the sound they wanted, and they weren't getting it. And so they decided they would head off to Toe Rag Studios in London, where everything is done in analog. And not only that, but even like the whole studios are apparently set up in a kind of 70s style. So they went there for that. And one of the cool things that was mentioned in one interview is they said, like, they would get the playback after the mix was done and say, they were asked, like, do you like it like this? Anything you want to change? This is good? Okay, now I'm going to print it. And that meant, like, that's it. That was how it was going to appear on the album. There's no, like, going back and tweaking this and that, like with digital. It's kind of like, as I always imagined it, like when you laminate, if you arrange some, like, photos and things on a sheet of paper, and then it's ready, and then you laminate it. Like, that's it. It's set. Cannot change it after that. But the album has such a cool feel to it, and the guitar sound is really this nasty, gritty guitar sound. The opening track, The Devil's Widow, it is a masterful track showing what this band can do. We start with a bit of an intro, that takes you into the song, and then that really grrr guitar sound, flute solo. We've got the lyrics. Later on, we've got a drum break, and we get a really cool guitar solo, and then another drum break, and then we get the flute solo. It's an awesome, awesome song. Now, this album here, they do actually start to expand their sonic palette a bit. We've got a song like Lorelei or Flower Phantoms, which actually have more of a 60s pop feel. Lorelei starts out that way, but later on, the guitar gets more teeth as the song goes on. Flower Phantoms just keeps up that whole kind of like a late 60s pop feeling to it. We've got like also things that Wurlitzer is in here as well, but we still get some really cool things like Half Moon Street is just has a really cool riff and a really cool feel to it. Rogue's Lot, How Do the Living Raise the Dead, opening line to that song. Wow, it's cool. Old Fire is really awesome. And the whole concept here behind The Lord of Misrule, the title of the album and the title track on the album, is from some custom in somewhere in England way back when, where they would choose one person to be the Lord of Misrule, and for 30 days, just like anything goes. It was just, you know, eating, drinking, and having a wild party. And at the end of the 30 days, throat got slit for the Lord of Misrule. So that shows up somewhere in history. That's interesting. But the song is also a really cool song. And we wrap up with Things Present, Things Past, which is a really nice, slow song led by acoustics, but has a good feel to it. And yeah, it's kind of like you have to imagine all of the tracks on this album have been different forms of entertainment under the Lord of Misrule. And now we have concluded that whole 30-day period. Wonderful album anyway. This is the first one I ever picked up. I don't think I even listened to it. I just heard Blood Ceremony. We're a Canadian band playing old school heavy rock and had flute, and I thought, sounds awesome, let me check it out. And yeah, love this album too. Okay, and that brings us up to the latest album here, The Old Ways Remain. This is actually a line that comes up in the song Witchwood on the third album, The Eldritch Dark. There's a line in the song that sings that The Old Ways Remain. The cover here, this is based on some works by Aubrey Beardsley, who was a Victorian age painter who did this, or a sketch artist anyway, who did this style of drawings. This album, okay, so I guess a little bit of background information is, you know, 2019, this came out in 2016, so 2019, it's about time to get another album together. They record a song called Lolly Willows, which is based on a book written in the 1920s about a young girl in London who leaves the city to head out to the countryside to pursue witchcraft. Perfect. Anyway, they released that as a song in 2019. And, you know, everything was kind of set to go back to London, back to Toe Rag Studios, get ready for the new album. And then, of course, COVID-19 breaks out. Everything gets shut down for the next 2 years. They can't do anything. And when things finally started coming together again, they thought, like, do we want to, you know, invest all our time and everything to go to London and have that, you know, that short time to put the album together and then risk, you know, another outbreak or, you know, another shutdown of transportation? So I thought, no, we're just going to record the album locally. So they recorded it in Toronto, which worked out very well. They got some friends to come in and play. We've got some violin, again, by I think it's Laura Bates on violin. And I'm sorry, I forget the names of the musicians who played saxophone on Eugenie and also pedal steel on Hecate. But, you know, we've got these added flavors to the album. There is a natural progression from here, you know, bringing in the kind of the 60s pop style, and it's developed more on here, particularly on a song like Hecate or Lolly Willows. Lolly Willows appears on the album here, a reworked version, so it's not exactly the same as the 2019 version. But this album has such diversity, and one of the things that I really love about it is that there are so many surprises in the music. That's one of the things, like with Blood Ceremony songs, you often don't know, is it going to, you know, suddenly slow down? Are we going to have like an organ break? Is there going to be a flute break? Or is there going to be a guitar solo? Is it going to speed up? Is it going to take us on some instrumental journey? What's going to happen? You never know in a song what's going to happen. And on this one here, I think because they're expanding more sonic territory, the possibilities just opened up more. Like one of the songs, I think, is it Lolly Willows? I think it has a very positive, upbeat feel to it, but there is a part where it changes to a darker riff and then returns to that kind of lighter feel, and again goes to that darker riff. And we have that in a lot of the songs, like Eugenie, really smooth, early 70s, kind of like movie soundtrack type of thing. But when the song seems like it's finished, then we go into this kind of grooving instrumental section. We've got wah-wah guitar, we've got saxophone solo over top. Yeah, really, really well done. And of course, we've got some of the tracks with the darker, heavier riffs. This album here is not as heavy as any of the other ones. You know, everything else has still had its heavy territory. Here, The riffs still carry some of the weight, but the overall production and the overall makeup of the songs, it's not like the previous albums. So in a way, there's a really cool balance between like this kind of more poppy side as well as the darker riff side, and then all these different moods coming in with the violin, or of course plenty of flute and organ and saxophone, and like with the song Hecate, that pedal steel, giving it almost a kind of like country feel to it. And the interesting thing about Hecate, I find, is if you listen to the music, you could imagine this woman is you know, in the early 70s there, smiling and singing about how the smile of her boyfriend or her lover makes, you know, her day filled with sunshine, except the song is about harvesting barberries, which as I understand were actually used in medicine in old times on the British Isles, maybe even throughout Europe. Yeah, and again, the final song again has this kind of like positive feeling to it, and very pretty, but then it finishes with this almost like sparse landscape where you can almost imagine like everyone is gone and they're just like ghosts fading away into the mists in the forest or something. Lots of great well composed, well thought out songs that just, you know, you never know what's going to happen next in any of the songs, or what's going to come on next when a song is finished. So brilliant piece of work. I really think this should go into the a nomination for the Juno Awards for hard rock and heavy metal. You know, like 2020, Unleash the Archers, I think it was 2021, Unleash the Archers got it for Abyss. I think Blood Ceremony deserve it for this album here. Fantastic piece of work. And Blood Ceremony, by the way, if you guys are watching, I'd like to make two recommendations, or two collaborations to consider. First of all, Lorena McKinnett. I think having her as a guest, you know, with the harp and maybe even with the vocals, I can imagine that you write a kind of a longer ballad with 3 characters. And 2 of the characters are a man and a woman who are in love. This is the time of the age of chivalry. The man must go away for whatever reason, must leave his sweetheart behind. And it's Lorena McKinnett and Lucas Gadke singing those parts. But then the woman's younger sister is infatuated with the man and wants to get him. And she pursues witchcraft to try to win him over. This is Alia singing. And in the end, through the witchcraft, there is some tragedy that happens. Somebody dies. 2 people, 3 people, who knows. But anyway, I'm just thinking that would be a really cool idea to do, like an extended ballad like that, like a story, and have all 3 vocalists and the harp and the flute and acoustic guitar and so on. I think it would be a fantastic track. The other recommendation, maybe this wouldn't work as well, I don't know, but Stuart Chatwood of the Tea Party, I think he's still living in the Toronto area. He has some of those exotic stringed instruments. Tea Party, I know that's more Middle Eastern mysticism as opposed to old British paganism, but I think, you know, he's a very talented musician. He's got some cool sounding instruments. Maybe something could work out between Blood Ceremony and Stuart Chatwood. I don't know. But anyway, there you have it, my feelings about these albums. I actually recorded a video the night before where I raved about each and every track, saying what I loved about it, but the video turned out to be over 45 minutes long. So I'm re-recording and trying to make it a bit shorter this time. All right, everybody, Blood Ceremony. If you have the albums and you love them, thank you for watching. Leave a comment about what you like about them, or what songs or albums you like. If you have only just sampled them a bit, hopefully my review of these albums will help you decide which way to go next. And if you're not really familiar with them, I do recommend checking them out. Take your pick if you want the heavier stuff, the kind of in-between stuff, or this new direction the band is going in. Either way, we're talking about one heck of a fantastic band. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video. Take care, everyone. See ya.